Hello and welcome back to another episode of Quarantine with Fulbrighters. We have another Fulbrighter here with us who is doing some phenomenal work in Pakistan. Salima Hakim is here with us, who has a master's in public policy from UT Austin, and everybody who's been to that university probably knows all about 6th Street. But that's not what we're here to discuss. We are here to discuss her work with Charter for Compassion. So it is an international organization, but for people who might not be aware, Salima, what is Charter for Compassion?
Uh, Charter for Compassion is an organization that was started with an idea given by Karen Armstrong. She's basically a reputed author who has written books like History of God. So basically, when she won TED Prize in 2008, when she was asked what's her wish, she said that she wants to have this global charter, which is designed around the concept of compassion, and she wanted that charter to be implemented all over the world. In 2000, one of the very first cities that signed this charter was Seattle. Charter for Compassion came to Pakistan in 2011, and Mr. Amin Hashwani is basically the one who's responsible for bringing this organization. Starting this organization in Pakistan. The very first activity that we did was basically we invited Ms. Karen Armstrong to Pakistan, and she held a series of lectures which are basically based on the concept of compassion. Once the organization was established, the first 2 years basically was spent on doing research and development. Basically, Charter for Compassion Pakistan wanted to basically develop projects or programs that will deal with social development issues, but we wanted to instill compassionate skills into it. So this was something very unique. And this was the basic principle on which we were working. On the basis of that, the Charter for Compassion team has developed a portfolio of projects and programs. We are working in the education sector. We are working in the healthcare sector. We are working in the women empowerment. We are working on that. So there are a lot of things that we are working on. I think that's about it.
There's definitely a dearth of compassion, especially in the current climate, with the global pandemic. I do think we do require compassion as a skill. How important do you think it is, or what do you think is the process to instill compassion at a younger primary level? Because I know Charter for Compassion works with schools all around Pakistan and all around the world as well. So how important it is for compassion to be developed as a skill as part of children's education?
The concept that you're talking about is something that really intrigued me about the organization. While I was looking for jobs, I read about the organization. One of my friends recommended it, and the amazing thing I think for me that's amazing is that at a very young age they are trying to instill compassionate skills into their curriculum, so that at a very young age children can start learning about compassionate skills, and it's basically taught in the form of activities. Compassionate skills are something which I think will show their impact when they are taught to children at a very young age. It's when you teach this to somebody in class 11th or 12th, they might not be able to inculcate that skill. So basically, and it's basically what we do is we have basically integrated compassionate skills into our school curriculum. So it's basically part of the school curriculum. Our CFC team has actually invested a lot of time into this. We have developed curriculums, and in this question, I want to talk about two of our programs. Basically, one is Compassionate School Network. What we do is in the Compassionate School Network program, we go to private schools in Karachi, and we train their teachers on compassionate skills. We have also developed curriculum from class 1 till 10th, which basically is supplementary also and can be integrated into the curriculum. And basically our purpose is that we train the teachers, and then the teachers are responsible to give training to the students. Our team goes and monitors those things to see whether the teachers are doing it in the right way. The other school project that we are doing is Compassionate School Project. Now this is something that is completely ours. In the Compassionate School Network, we are relying on the teachers, and it's another school management. In the Compassionate School project that we have, it's basically we are running schools for the government of Sindh under the public-private partnership model. So what we are doing is we are the ones which are managing the schools on behalf of the government of Sindh. So we can make all those decisions. It's something that whatever we decide gets implemented in the school. So we have designed our curriculum, and we have integrated compassionate skills into it. So what we do is that we are teaching them, when we are teaching them English, Urdu, whatever subject that we are teaching, uske andar humne compassionate skills ko dal diye. Basically, one thing that we have done is, which is basically CFC Pakistan initiative, is that we have basically we are focusing on 9 skills of compassion, which are integrity, self-compassion, mindfulness, courage, forgiveness, altruism, humility, gratitude, and empathy. Karen Armstrong basically is somebody who advocates on, who basically is somebody who stresses on the golden rule, which is, the golden rule is basically you should treat others the way you want to be treated by them. This is basically
do
the
unto
concept.
others like you would like done to yourself.
Yeah, that's the concept, and this is something that we are also trying to inculcate into our school curriculum. We have an entire project team who's responsible and who's working on that. It's our academics team is working very closely with them, and this is something that we have also noticed. It's like, we are taking care of government schools, ठीक है, where हम जो है उनको compassionate skills we are teaching them about that. तो हमने वो difference भी have also noticed कि वो compassionate skills उनको आहिस्ता आहिस्ता उनको at least now they have awareness of these. A concept like empathy, उसको in the form of activities अगर हम सिखाएं to children at very young age, तो वो they will be able to instill that. It can embed deeper into their character or their personality.
I think especially we also confuse sympathy for empathy. So really teaching people to embody other people's experiences and talk to them at their level, not have pity on them, but really understand what people are going through, would make for a lot more compassionate world. I do understand the value of teaching that at a younger age, but in terms of teacher training, I want to specifically ask you, what are some of the struggles that you face? Because people of a certain age, and especially in Pakistan with certain stories about teachers coming out recently, is there any resistance to the concept that, do teachers turn around and say, oh, we're geniuses with physics and chemistry, why do we need to learn compassion as a skill or inculcate that within our students?
As far as the compassionate school network is concerned, those schools are basically not in our control.
Yeah.
So basically what we do is we do give them training. The only problem, I think most of the problem that we get is, as far as this concept is concerned, is that it becomes very difficult to meet with them that often. They do not have that much time. So this requires a frequent interaction with them so that we can guide them whether they are going in the right track or not, because there are a lot of activities that we have designed under each skill. Teachers, of course, they don't want to sit. We basically, most of the trainings that we do is after school. So they don't want to spend time there, or they want to go home. And some of the schools that we have gone to are schools in the underserved communities. So wahan pe to aur zyada problem hai. The female have problem, we can't stay back for a very long time. We do face such problems, but when we do our activities, they do really appreciate it. Yeah, oh, this is a very new concept and we want to try this. So we never, as far as the attitude is concerned, we didn't face a lot of resistance, but for management and all those things, usme kya hota hai, you need frequent interaction with them, because once wo gap aa jata hai, when the gap comes, unko wapas laana, it becomes very difficult.
Yeah. So especially with the pandemic now, education is being moved online. And I think when we talk about online education, a lot of times we miss out on these skills, which are skills of socialization or skills of compassion. Do you feel with online education, children will miss out on skills like this and they cannot be replicated in an online system?
No, I don't think that we, right now for us, it is becoming, right now we are not doing any online thing for the students as far as our schools are concerned. We are trying to develop a system, an online teaching system for our learners under the AALTP project, which is basically a project we are doing with Sindh Education Foundation, where we are giving informal education to, it's basically, they have their own curriculum which we are teaching to them. For our conventional schools, we are not doing anything like that because it does become difficult, although our teachers are coming to the school. And currently what we have done is, during the lockdown period, we are working on those lesson plans that I was talking about. We are trying to make it better. We are calling our teachers. They are working from home basically, and we are trying to make our lesson plans better. So once the school starts, we'll be able to implement those lesson plans. Conducting online classes would be a challenge as far as government schools are concerned, because the teachers are not willing to come to the school.
Even if
That's
the
basically
resources
another thing.
existed, I would assume that
Yeah.
without that human connection, it would be very hard to inculcate compassion without students actually meeting each other or taking part in activities like you said.
Yeah, and one more thing is they even don't have the resources to take part in online school, online teaching or whatever. So this is a huge challenge for us. But right now, what we are doing is we are improving our lesson plans. We are working on our lesson plans, and we are trying to strengthen our school system so that once the students come to the school, we'll be able to implement those.
So talking also about COVID, Charter for Compassion has started a volunteer program as well, right? Called Razakar.
Yeah.
What is
It's
that?
Razakar. It's basically right now we have a lot of projects, as I mentioned earlier, in healthcare sector, and we need a lot of people for different types of tasks. Actually, we need people for the development of lesson plans. That has been our number one priority right now. So through this platform, I wanted to basically use this platform. If anybody wants to volunteer, so please do contact us. We need people who can develop lesson plans or who can do graphic designing, because it is becoming very difficult to get the work done. And this is the time to basically do all the groundwork. So because once the school starts, we will not be able to do that.
And
So Razakar is something that we have started. It's quite recent, and we did get some volunteers and who have been helping us with the lesson plans. So, but still, the work is we need a lot of people to develop our lesson plans, because I don't think we have a lot of time left.
I'm sold. I'm going to become a Razakar. We also had Hashim Kaleem
Awesome.
on. I think the advantage of the Fulbright network is exactly this: that when one organization or one Fulbrighter needs help, you have access to this entire network. We had Hashim Kaleem on to discuss education a couple of weeks ago, and there's so many people with degrees in education who are part of the Fulbright network. Hopefully, everybody who's listening, time to be a Razakar, time to volunteer and make these lesson plans. Apart from Razakar, there's also another program about women empowerment called Mumkin.
Yeah, it's basically a program. There currently we have two projects. Firstly, it's Subikiran, which is it's basically we are basically wrapping it up, and the second one is Hamkadam. In this project, we are providing vocational training to women from in the underserved areas, and then what we do is we try to place them in different organizations. We are basically providing them vocational trainings in beautician, in dressmaking, and also in office management courses. So what we do is we provide them training for a certain amount of time, and then after that we try to place them in organizations. This has been one of the most prominent project of ours. Um, Prominent project of ours, and during the COVID time, actually, when women, especially from those underserved areas, and their husbands who had lost jobs and they were not able to earn, we were able to provide them with employment by asking them to basically the major problem that these women face is that they they're not allowed to move away from their community to find work. It's like they are restricted. The only place where they can find work is within their community. So we were facing that problem. What we did was we established employment centers in our training center. We are providing them with a space where they can interact with each other, where they can come, they can use our equipment, and then they can. We also give them orders also, so they can get the work done there. They don't need to come all the days. They come 3 days or 4 days, and then they're able to earn. During the COVID thing, the first thing that we did was we provided ration to our beneficiaries, Mumkin program beneficiaries, because they were suffering a lot. Second thing that we did was that, it's better if we make them self-sufficient rather than rely on resources from others. So what we did was we basically did a campaign where we asked people to buy masks from us. And then we asked these women to come to our centers and make those masks. And we were the ones who were responsible for also distributing those masks. Basically, whoever wants us to make masks for them, they contacted us and asked us to distribute these masks to a certain region. So we basically did that for them also. So through this activity, I think minimum amount that a woman has earned has been in 1 month has been rupees 25,000.
That's great.
So basically this was something that was amazing that happened. And currently we are still trying to get work for them however we can.
So sometimes what organizations that do not have a presence, which do not have local presence or do not emerge out of grassroots, especially with women empowerment, they tend to get the criticism that a lot of these ideas are imported, which are not rooted in our local realities. So what are some of the challenges that you faced with this program? And what would you recommend in terms of ideas of women empowerment? Like you said, if it's not possible to take them out of their houses or take them out of their comfort zone, taking the work to them. So what are some of these challenges that other organizations who are trying to work in this field can replicate or learn from?
I think the biggest challenge was that the project that we were doing was that we had to train them and then we have to place them, right? So the biggest challenge for us, especially for the women who had learned the dressmaking, who got the dressmaking training, was that they were not willing to leave their communities. And you don't get a lot of work from there. The kind of money you can earn by working in a factory, you can't compare that to making clothes in your community. Yet what we did was that we established these employment centers, and we got orders from companies like Khadi, Nisha Lakhani. We got these orders, and our trainer basically was doing quality control them and was also helping them out. If they were making any errors, she was there, she was available for them, and she was helping them out. This has been a major challenge for us, that when the time comes for placement, when we interview them for our program, they're like, oh, we'll work for you, we don't mind. And by the time they finish the training, they're like, oh, we can't work. So this becomes a huge hassle for us. So one of the solutions that we thought of was having these employment centers in the community. Besides that, for the Mumkin program, I think our beautician our trainees who've taken courses in beautician and office management, they have not given us any trouble in that. They have been actually quite happy with wherever we have placed them.
No YouTube makeup artists have emerged from the program. It's Charter for Compassion, not helping them become YouTubers, TikTok stars.
But they are using, actually one of them they are using social media platforms. Maybe not YouTube, but Instagram, yeah. And recently we had this trainee who told us that during the COVID thing, she started doing that, publicizing her work on Instagram, and she got a lot of clients because of that. So she have established. And one more thing that we are doing is, in our Mumkin program, is we are providing them training on compassionate skills, how they can adopt these skills into their lives to improve the quality of their life. And also we are training them on entrepreneurship skills. It's how they can establish their own little setup in their homes. For example, most of our beautician students prefer to do a little training with an established salon initially, and then they develop their own setups at home. So this is something that we are extremely proud of.
No, but that's great. And especially I'm being quite serious about the TikTok thing. A lot of these people can achieve a lot by gaining some social media popularity, not just in terms of fame, but also in terms of actual work. Like you mentioned, the person who got on social media and got a lot of orders. There's a lot of potential there, even though people frown upon platforms like TikTok. It has a great reach, and it can do a lot for these communities.
Especially during these times when people are not, you do not get the opportunity to interact with them or show them your work in a facility. So I think this is a really good medium for that.
Yes, it is a great medium, and it is some great work that you're doing. There's also a health initiative. There's just so much to talk about for Charter for Compassion that we're running through these things, but there is also a health initiative that I do want to talk about as well.
It's basically what we are doing is that we are it's basically more or less like our other programs, but we are doing that in the healthcare sector. We are giving training to them on compassionate skills, how they can improve patient experience, and how they can, there's this concept of compassionate fatigue. It's medical professionals, they also need, it's like one important concept in our compassionate skills is self-compassion.
Yes.
It's very important to show compassion for yourself. It's extremely important. Rather than showing compassion to others, you need to also think of yourself. So what we have done is that we have worked with AKU, and we have provided training to them, to the AKU medical staff of Children's Hospital, and we have provided them training on compassionate skills. And we have also provided similar trainings to lady health supervisors in Tharparkar district, so that they can teach their lady health workers on how to deal with their patients with compassion. Another thing that we are doing under this program is we are starting our own online mental health platform called Rubaru,
Wow.
where not only we'll be creating awareness about mental health, we'll be basically targeting people from the rural areas, we'll be catering to people from LGBT community, people who have disabilities. So what we will do is, it's very important initially to raise awareness about mental health, especially during the time of this pandemic.
I wonder
So
where
we
you will
are
find
planning
a
on
Fulbrighter who's also a mental health advocate and does a lot to raise awareness.
Okay.
I wonder
Oh,
who in the
really?
Fulbright network does all of this work. If there could just be somebody who can help out.
Okay, that's awesome. But it's basically, this is something that we are planning to launch by next month. We are currently developing this program, and firstly, we want to raise awareness about mental health. And we have a lot of presence in the interior Sindh region. We do want to start this program there also. Another thing we want to do is we want to provide them with online counseling. It's something that would help a lot of people, especially in the rural areas, because there, people, they're not even willing to accept the fact that they are going through a certain mental trauma, or they are depressed. So it's extremely important to first develop an awareness, and then work on providing them with online counseling. So we hope that it gets launched by next month, and hope that helps people.
That's absolutely true. I think a lot of times it's just the stigma of even talking about it. A lot of people don't even acknowledge it or think it's a thing. The more episodes I do of Quarantine with Fulbrighters, the more I realize that Fulbrighters specifically, talking to them, they're very connected to what is happening, and their work really revolves around what is happening at the grassroots level, and really trying to find solutions for the problems that exist, not just importing solutions and then trying to force them into maybe round holes into square pegs. How important was your education, and what specifically did you learn at UT Austin that has really helped you in your work?
I basically, before the Fulbright thing happened to me, I was working in a bank, extremely depressed. I had always wanted to work.
This has now turned into your
but I always, it's like I always, I am, my parents are from Hunza. Nice. And I have seen the positive impact of social development projects there, and especially when the projects are designed around creating self-sufficiency amongst people. So I have seen that, and I have seen the positive impact, and I have seen how it has changed lives of people there. So I wanted to get into this thing, but I don't know, maybe, at that time I was like, I wanted to study about non-profit management, but in Pakistan we do not, especially at my time, there was no institute that we can do MBA, but there was nothing for non-profit management. One of my friends basically told me, you should apply for Fulbright, and trust me, I didn't know I would get into this program.
Were you in Hunza?
I got the opportunity.
Bachelor's there?
No. I have been no. I did it from Karachi. I have been living in Karachi, but I have visited Hunza a lot. I was born and raised here.
And what was your bachelor's in?
I did my BBA.
Okay.
So,
This is why the depression
so
about the
basically,
bank job. This is where it's coming from. The sadness about the bank
yeah.
job.
And before I got into the Fulbright thing, I was doing my MBA.
Okay.
So more depressed. So basically, once I got into Fulbright and I got the opportunity to study in University of Tech, I got the opportunity to study at UT Austin, University of Texas Austin, and at the Lyndon B. Johnson School.
Nice.
And I think for me, the most important thing that has helped me is learning adaptability, because that place was completely new for me. Uh, there was actually there was nobody from Fulbright there also. Fulbright, and no Pakistani student for under the Fulbright program.
That's so
So I
interesting.
was all alone in the city.
Austin is a big.
I had no relatives. I had no friends there at the initial days, and it's
Wait, are you
something that it
boasting or is that a
although
complaint? Are you happy about that? Or
it used to be. It's like it used to be a complaint initially, but later on realized that it was a great learning experience for me.
also a blessing?
Amazing learning experience for me. A blessing, yes.
No family
It's
to.
like for somebody who has been very indecisive, who used to rely on her siblings and parents for making small decisions for her, going to another country, living in a completely new city. And it's like, even you go to their what do you call it,
Bars.
it's not bars.
Because I'm thinking, I'm just
I've
happy.
never been to bars.
I'm just saying I would be happy that no family member will find me at 2 a.m. on 6th Street. So I would be glad. I would gladly live in UT Austin, not having any family over there.
It's like, but it's like with time, it allowed me to, I was traveling by myself, which is something that I never imagined. Remember those mini vacations that we used to take? But the Fulbright students, that we had these mini vacations. So we were traveling by ourselves. We were doing our own shopping. We were interacting with people from different cultures, which provided us with so much learning opportunities, which gave us a lot of, which allowed us to share our experiences. And they used to get intrigued by Pakistan and what was happening in Pakistan, and we used to get intrigued by whatever was happening there. So the Fulbright platform actually allowed us to not only experience life independently, but also interact with people from so many cultures. We had these enrichment seminars where we were given the opportunity to interact with people from different Fulbright scholars from different countries. So for me, Fulbright experience taught me to be adaptable. And then that experience, that skill has basically the job that I'm doing right now, where I have to go to interiors and where I have to ensure that our project is being implemented there. It's like there are people of completely different mindset, and you need a lot of patience to work with them. So that experience helped me a lot in that. So I'm
As much,
extremely grateful for that.
as much of a cliche that it sounded to us before we actually went on it, once you do go on a Fulbright, you realize it is the Fulbright experience. It's not just
It's
going
the
to the
Fulbright
US and
experience.
studying. It's
Yeah.
everything. It's everything that comes with that.
It's everything. You have to manage your money. You have to manage everything. There's nobody there. You are sad. You have to, deal with it yourself.
I was very
There's
happy
no
that
mommy, daddy there.
I was quite happy that there was no
I
mommy daddy there.
initially I used to, but then I was like, initially there used to be Skype calls every day. Then it was like thrice in a month, something like that.
Because I also took a career shift. So I did my BLLB from LUMS and then I did my master's in theater on a Fulbright. I don't think without a Fulbright, I would have been able to do that. I would probably also be working at a bank, but maybe as a lawyer.
Oh no.
We've already
Okay,
received a call
awesome.
to action from you for everybody who's listening. So if you want to help out, be a part of the Razakar program. But I do want to end it by asking you that in the current world that there is a dearth of compassion. Can you make a plea for people how to maybe include compassion in their own lives? Yeah.
Especially at the time when mental health has become such a talked about thing. It's very important to in some way or the other connect with each other. I think this is something that's extremely important in today's time. And compassion, if you have compassion, it's you were talking about difference between sympathy and
Yes.
compassion, empathy, sympathy
Yes.
and empathy. it's really important to be empathetic at this time rather than being sympathetic for other people. So this is something that I
Yeah.
believe in. Yeah.
Especially with mental health, I think a lot of times people don't understand. They don't think that, especially with depression, that it is something different or it's something that we might not have felt. So if they find somebody being depressed, they always tend to prescribe things that work from themselves without realizing that all of us experience life very differently. And if something that works for you may not work for somebody else. So it's not about looking down upon them or blaming them for their ills. It's not about having sympathy for them. It's about having empathy. It's about realizing that everyone's struggles are different and people might be slaying dragons
Yeah.
even though you might not be able to see them. So for the mental health advocate and awareness person that you were going to hire, did I do a good job with
Okay. Yeah, you did.
Thank you so much, Salima, for joining us. I will be sending my CV to you very
Thank you, Siddharth.
soon as well.
Yeah,
And
I'll share my email address. Yeah.
this is what Fulbright does, connects people. Thank
Yeah.
you everybody for listening. We will be back next week with another episode of Quarantine with Fulbrighters. Thank you, Salima, for coming, and thank you everybody for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you. Bye.